Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. The Ones of Mortis have been in the galaxy for a very long time, presumably hundreds of years. The daughter, the representative of the light side of the Force, the son, the representative of the dark, and the father, the balance between the two of them. Their roles in the galaxy and the Force itself is complex, but it's clear that they're more so representatives rather than the entire embodiment of the forces that they represent. In the Mortis arc, the father has comments to Anakin Skywalker that this was not his true form, but rather the physical form that they chose to represent where they stand. Their truest forms are within the Force itself. These higher beings are exceptionally powerful and interesting to the lore, and with this, we have sought through many pages of Star Wars comics, both legends, canon, as well as novels, to indicate who exactly knew of the existence of the gods of Mortis. What were these individuals' thoughts on these extremely powerful Force deities? And today, my friends, we have found the particularly interesting writings of Darth Plagueis the Wise from two sources today, the first of which coming from the Book of the Sith as compiled and written by Darth Sidious, and the second from the Darth Plagueis novel itself. However, in the novelization, Plagueis refers to them as Celestials rather than the gods of Mortis. In the Book of the Sith, we have the section of Darth Plagueis. Most of the writings involve the grand plan of the Sith and how Plagueis envisions his galaxy as its ultimate emperor. Plagueis believed that he would attain ultimate power in the Force through more scientific methods, especially his study and manipulation of the midichlorians. Sidious's plan, which was part successful, was to manipulate the midichlorians to cast a large and foreboding shadow over the Force itself, the cloud that the Jedi describe over the course of the Clone Wars, a cloud that they cannot pierce through. Plagueis' plan was to manipulate the midichlorians, his own in fact, to create life, essentially becoming a god, and with his fascination of becoming a god, led him to more teachings, especially those who had already become divine themselves, specifically the gods of Mortis. But rather, Plagueis had an interesting take on them. Speaking about the gods of Mortis, Plagueis' comments are directly intertwined with that of the Jedi Chosen One prophecy. Plagueis is one of the few individuals in the entire galaxy intelligent enough to see that the Chosen One prophecy and the gods of Mortis were directly intertwined, able to pierce through the intention, realizing that the Mortis god story, at least to him, was an allegory for the Force itself. But where Plagueis made a major mistake is spitting in the face of the prophecy of the Chosen One and the gods of Mortis. He believed that these were false teachings, stories that the Jedi would tell themselves to be able to sleep at night, knowing that the Sith were still likely out there somewhere among the stars, fighting power, hunting the Jedi Order in the shadows at every move, fracturing it whenever possible. This was a fatal mistake on behalf of Plagueis. He was insanely intelligent enough to understand what the true meaning of the Ones of Mortis were, but instead, he threw it away as myth. Plagueis first describes the story of the Ones of Mortis as simple storytelling by Jedi mystics. At first, Plagueis comments about the very state of where Mortis would exist in the galaxy, stating that the planet itself residing there in the star maps would be impossible. As we would later come to learn from the Clone Wars, Mortis is only revealed to those that the gods seek to reveal themselves to, such as when the Chosen One arrived on the world. Plagueis concluded that the story of the gods of Mortis would be one that the Jedi would tell themselves in times of great darkness, a story of hope that they would all needlessly cling to when the Sith would eventually gain total control. He stated that any Jedi that believed in this was a fool, and he saw the clear connection to the path of the Chosen One itself. Interestingly here, Plagueis disregards everything having to do with the Mortis gods because he directly links it to the Jedi Chosen One, and anything Jedi related, Plagueis deems outright foolish, especially such tales as one that would bring balance to the Force and utterly obliterate the Sith. Plagueis believed this to be utterly impossible until he would sense the very boy of Anakin Skywalker in the Phantom Menace. But of course, these writings from Darth Plagueis concerning the Ones of Mortis happened decades before Anakin's arrival to Coruscant, and it's likely that upon sensing the very presence of Anakin, Plagueis' very thoughts about Mortis would have likely changed. Unfortunately though, we never get to learn of this directly, as it's never brought up or addressed in the Plagueis novel. But that doesn't mean that the arrival of the Chosen One didn't make Plagueis question his thoughts on Mortis, and the idea that the Ones of Mortis were not simply a Jedi story, but rather could actually be entities that existed. And perhaps speculative, in the final days of Darth Plagueis, he realized that instead of seeking to dominate the midichlorians, he was looking for power in all the wrong places. Plagueis is known for discounting things as myth extremely quickly, far more quickly than his apprentice would in Darth Sidious, who we learn thanks to Star Wars Rebels actually knew of the ones of Mortis and believed in their prophecy and tale. Palpatine even gained access to the world between worlds, and this is ultimately where Plagueis fell short. Plagueis didn't even believe that there were any dark side spirits left on the world of Korriban. Even when one directly appeared to him, he simply believed it was a trick, and that the Sith Lord was growing tired. This again leads into one of the greatest weaknesses of Plagueis himself, his own thoughts that he is the supreme being in the Force and is completely infallible. The concept that anything was above Plagueis, even the Force and the midichlorians itself, was beyond his understanding. He viewed himself as the Sith Chosen One, the Sith Ari, and eventually believed that he would be the ultimate being within the Force itself, able to manipulate the midichlorians at will, to stop himself and anybody else from dying, to mold and shift the galaxy in his own image. Plagueis thought himself a false god, and the idea that there were three beings above Plagueis' own perceived godhood made no sense to the Sith Lord. Plagueis even used this to elevate himself above the Jedi, stating that the Jedi still believed in old stories and superstition, where Plagueis believed in science and the study of the Force itself, using this self-praise to elevate himself further. In the Darth Plagueis novel, Plagueis also reminisces of the idea of representatives of the Force, and although he does not name them directly, instead referring to them as Celestials, we do believe he is in some manner speaking of the ones of Mortis, especially since the ones of Mortis are considered to be ancestors of the Celestials. Plagueis talks about the Celestials as architects of the galaxy, individuals that after creating the very galaxy itself joined with the Force, achieving perfect harmony and balance. This is exactly how Plagueis saw himself. However, instead of service to the Force would be in service to Plagueis. He would dominate and join with the Force just as these ancient Celestials had, but instead of the Force reigning supreme, it would be the Order of Sith. Plagueis believed that if these stories were true, and he believed that the idea of the Celestials might be where the ones of Mortis were not, that the Celestials may have determined the very state of the galaxy itself, becoming the Force itself. Plagueis believed that perhaps this is what godhood had in store for him, a new architect of a new universe potentially. In the end though, to Plagueis, these were just simple theories, and the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, the idea and the concepts of the ones of Mortis were above Plagueis' train of thought. The study of these higher concepts of the Force is not only something that Plagueis disliked, he outright hated it. He believed that even the teachings of ancient Sith masters, which he could confirm did live, were useless to the power that he himself would attain. Plagueis, in many ways, was the ultimate Star Wars narcissist, and it was because of this that at the perfect moment, Darth Sidious, Lord of the Sith, would strike him down, himself none the wiser. But with this raises an exceptionally interesting question. What would have Darth Plagueis' thoughts on the ones of Mortis been if he had lived past the Phantom Menace? If he had learned that Anakin Skywalker was indeed the Chosen One? Would have thoughts on the higher mysteries of the Force opened themselves up to Plagueis? In the end, they were never meant to. But what would an enlightened Darth Plagueis really look like? If you guys would like us to continue to do deep dives on the ones of Mortis and various other Force wielders and what they know about them, please be sure to leave a like and comment it down below, as we do have more writings in the ancient lore about the ones of Mortis and what others believe they might have been. As always, my friends, thank you so much for passing by the channel today, and may the Force be with you.